Hello, and welcome to the Say Yes to Holiness podcast. I'm Christina Simmons, your host, and I'm so very excited to have our guest today, Marcie Stokman, who she has been doing this particular apostolate now for more than 10 years. It started in 2012, and I'm so upset that I didn't know about it before now. So I'm excited to be able to bring you this information because she is the founder and I would say the driving force behind Well-Read Mom. And so, Marcie, thank you so much for being here today and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Christina. It's an honor, a privilege.
Oh, not at all. As I said before, I was really sad that I had not heard about this beforehand because this is very much right up my alley. I absolutely love reading, and in my own apostolate, I speak about the importance of spiritual reading. But what I think is really great about what you do is that it really integrates not just spiritual reading, but it's also that reading for life, that reading to be able to enrich our lives and really open ourselves up to beauty. And so I'm excited to talk more about it with you today. But before we get going, would you mind sharing with everybody kind of where you are and what you're doing right now and kind of how you got to what you're doing today?
Sure. I'm a mother, married to, well, first I'm a wife. I'm married to Pete, and we've been married 37 years and 7 children, and our 15th grandchild, I guess, is on the way. Praise God. That's exciting. And I have always loved to read. Reading has been part of my life growing up. My mom would send us to the library when we were kids, and we would come home with a stack of books every other day. And I was the one that actually read them. I think of all my siblings, I was the reader. And so when I became a mom and had kids and it got busier and busier, reading sort of fell by the wayside. And I found that I wasn't reading the kind of books I was reading before, when I had more accountability to read well, to read quality literature. And there was a point in my life, Christina, let's see, it was 10 years ago, and my daughter was a new mom, and she called me one day and she said, "Mom, I'm not going back to that mother's group. I've been there 3 times, and all they're talking about is their kids, what kind of diaper to buy." She said, "Mom, isn't there a place after college where women get together and talk about the real questions of life?" And I heard in Beth's voice a loneliness. And I had experienced that same loneliness when I was a new mom. You're by yourself in the house with this little baby and you don't quite know what to do. Maybe like when I was a new mom, I didn't know one other woman with a baby. And I had a colicky, Jim was colicky, and my husband was gone all the time. And it was really lonely. And I heard that loneliness in her voice. And at that time in my life, I was giving some talks to women where I live in northern Minnesota, like mothers of preschoolers. And I'd spoken to them on children's literature. And they said, "Can you speak again and speak on whatever you want?" And I thought, I'm just going to call it Well-Read Mom. It just came to me. I want to speak to women on the importance of reading. And I think I was doing that for myself, actually, because like I said, it had kind of fallen out of my life, good reading. And so I gave a talk 3 different places about the value of reading for women. And each time I gave that talk, I drove home sad because women weren't reading. Maybe people would read a self-help book, but these women, or a parenting book, but no, not one single woman was reading quality literature for its own sake. And again, I wasn't either. So I felt like a hypocrite because I'm talking about the value of reading, which I do believe in, and yet I wasn't doing it. And I was sort of putting a burden on the women, like, I'm here to tell you one more way you're failing, So I didn't feel good about it. And so when my daughter called me and said, "Isn't there a place?" So I heard her loneliness. And at the same time, I understood my own longing just to get back into reading and be helped by good literature.
Mhm.
Those two desires merged and Well Read Mom was born. And we said, let's do this together. Let's read really good books together. Beth, you get together with your friends in St. Paul, and I'll get together with my friends. And I said, I'll put together a 5-year book list and let's really do this. Let's read and discuss great literature, and you'll grow in friendships, and yet it's something we can talk about as mother-daughter. And so that's how it started,
Mhm.
Christina.
I mean, and talk about the Holy Spirit there, because he was already nudging your heart in the sense of, you're speaking to women and you're feeling that hypocritical kind of, I'm not living this. And, and I probably, it's always in the back of our mind. I should always do something about it. But then what's the prompter? The prompter is the need that's expressed, particularly in this case by your daughter. And it's just like, okay, I have to do something. And that's absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad that you said yes, to that, because so often we'll just put it off again. And what beautiful fruits that are coming, from what it is that you're doing. In fact, in the introduction video I watched on wellreadmom.com, there's actually at the end, you say, Well Read Mom is a movement of women who are accompanying one another in reading the classics, great books, and timeless spiritual works from the Western and Catholic tradition in order to awaken the moral imagination to a greater truth of reality. So we were talking before we got on, and there's tons to unpack here. I mean, I could have all sorts of fun, but let me just start with the question. Why the classics and great books and those spiritual works from Western and Catholic tradition? Why those?
Well, for one thing, because they're books I really won't read on my own.
Mm,
We read Les Miserables, and it's a Victorian novel. It's of 1,000 pages. There's no way I would have read that. I thought it was too much. I talked to my daughter Beth, and I said, honey, she said, well, Mom, where's Les Miserables? I thought we were reading that, next year. And I said, well, I thought maybe it'd be too much because we already read. She goes, Mom, you got to put it back on the list, because when will I ever read it if I don't read it with my friends? And because we have accountability to read great and worthy books together. And why this kind of quality literature? Because take Jean Valjean from Les Miserables. Many of us have seen the movie or the play. And it's a story about Jean Valjean, this prisoner, 24601. And it's the story of his life's journey
mhm,
of sanctification. He's being, he has a conversion with this good and holy bishop who says, when he's caught stealing the candlesticks, I bought your soul for God. And then we see the rest of his life where Jean Valjean learns to love. And it's not like, and when he holds on to anger or unforgiveness, it's like he's back in prison. So you see the stages of a person, or a character's journey to grow, like in holiness. And that book helped me so much. When I read Les Miserables, Christina, I found myself saying again and again, my desire would just sort of open up, well up, and I'd say, I want this. I want to be like this. I want to love like this. Lord, I want to forgive like this. Help me desire, my desire was there
mhm.
from reading. So we read great and worthy books, a spiritual classic during Advent and Lent. But really, I think every good work of literature helps us grow closer to the Lord because it's human. A truly human book is going to show the brokenness of or the consequences of original sin and our very real need for a savior.
Mm. How absolutely true. I'd made mention before about, the book by Mortimer Adler and Charles Van Doren called How to Read a Good Book. And although it's a very practical how to, they have this essay in the back about talking about, the value of reading. And they speak about exactly what you're talking about, which is the value of reading and the growth of our mind. And it's the growth of our soul. And that's actually, my master's thesis was on the power of a story for living a life of authentic discipleship. And what you talked about right there of how it uplifted you, how it inspired you, how it encouraged you, and you're like, I want that. That is the best of all worlds. And to be able to remind people that there is this goodness and beauty and truth out there. And I think it's just so great, but to have that accountability and to be accompanied by one another in friendship. Oh, it just brings all the best pieces all together, and I just get super excited thinking about it. So a lot of people, because you called it the well-read mom, and a lot of people might be thinking that because of that, that you either got to be a mom or you have to have been well-read, or because you're using Catholic literature, Western civilization, kind of focus that maybe that you have to be a particular faith or have a particular background. But I see that you say all women, regardless of the faith background and stage in life, are welcome. Why did you decide to pursue that practice in the midst of establishing Well-Read Mom?
That it's for all women. It just, the origin came through my daughter and her cry when she was a new mom. So we went with that name, just made sense, and that was the name of my talk I was giving. So we kept the name, but it is for all women. And I think ontologically every woman is a mother, even if she's not biologically a mother. So we have women who are single. We have groups of young adult women. My daughter leads a group that they're not married. They're all just single working women. We have widows. We have empty nesters. Our oldest woman that I know of is 85. And she came up to me and she said, please don't forget the widows. She said, so many of my friends have died and I really look forward to my meeting. So yeah, we're all across the board, all ages from, I would say, 19 to 85. So it really is a unit. It really is a woman's heart. There's the cry in my daughter's heart. There's a cry in a lot of women's hearts. So
can definitely identify, even though I've been a book lover and have read voraciously myself, to have a place to be able to share, especially the great books, to be able to share and to speak about it and how it is helping transform my life is very much transformative in itself. And so very great. Now, I know that, from your website, you founded Well-Read Mom back in 2012, and you're celebrating 10 years, right now. But you also wrote a book of the same name, The Well-Read Mom, in 2019. And I wanted to just ask the question. So why and how did the book come about?
Well, the book came about because we wrote a few grants trying to find some funding, and the one that we received was for me to write a book. So that's how it started. But I also think it was important to capture the essence of how this began, capture the story, so that any woman who can go and listen to that story, read that story, and kind of understand the whole program or how it actually works, the need for it. And yeah, the book is this full of stories, parenting stories, tips on reading, and the center part is about why reading matters. And I feel so strongly about it. I keep understanding this more and more, the need to the importance that we maintain and grow in our ability to read, especially from print, because the way we read is changing.
Right.
In fact, in the last 10 years since Well-Read Mom started, I really believe we've moved through this transition from a print-based culture to a digital-based culture.
Mhm, mhm.
And sometimes we, the research is that people are doing research on the changes in the brain with digital reading versus reading from print. But we're living through this.
Mhm.
So sometimes we don't know that we don't know that we're potentially losing something if we don't maintain our ability to read from print.
No, I totally agree. And on kind of the other side of the coin, there is the loss of the great storytellers, the great bards that used to tell our great stories. And we lost our capacity to sit and listen and be attentive for long periods of time.
Mm.
And that was over the course of several centuries. But the fact is that we see that today. In fact, they talk about attention span is now less than 7 seconds. So when people comment and they'll be like, oh, I can't read for more than like 2 minutes, and then I like get distracted. That's a real common one when it comes to prayer too. And there's a reason, is because we have to, as you spoke about in your book, we have to exercise those muscles, and to be able to, and reading is a muscle of its own. It's incorporating a whole bunch of different muscles, but particularly as you talked about, the moral imagination, and being able to be present. So one of the things you speak about in your book, and you beautifully talk about the benefits of reading and how it really can be a form of self-care, and how many women out there aren't willing to take the time for themselves. They'll take the time for every kid, they'll take the time for their spouse, they'll take the time for their parents, friends, everyone, but not for themselves. And many times what will happen, as you speak of, is that we'll go and turn to TV, or we'll turn to something, that kind of seems to be filling us, but it really is not. It's kind of like junk food instead of real food, real nourishment. And so how is it that you might encourage someone who is saying, gee, I don't have the time? How might you encourage them to be able to kind of reframe it so they can see that this is really almost as good, or I personally say it's better. It's like a massage for the mind. So instead of massage for the body, go and get a massage for the mind.
How to encourage someone in when they don't have time. Well, that's the number one reason we give across the board. I don't have time. And so how do we find time to read when we don't have time? Because I think sometimes in our life we don't have time, right?
Mhm.
There have been times in my life when I did not have time to read due to personal sickness, one of my kids being sick, or taking care of elderly parents. Just there are seasons in life where, and we only have one rule: if you don't get the reading done, don't apologize. So this is not to put a guilt trip on every woman can succeed in, and success looks different because, like you said, Christina, we have lost our ability to focus deeply. We've lost the ability to have disciplined, focused attention, but we can gain it back. It's just a work to get it back.
Mhm.
So if we can be biliterate readers, in other words, digital reading's here to stay. We're going to be on our computers. I think that's just part of the time we live in. Yet if we can maintain an ability to read from print, like 20 to 30 minutes a day, develop a reading practice or a reading habit. Every time I pick up a new novel for Well-Read Mom, we read, if we follow the school year, September through actually June. But
Mhm.
every time I start a new book, I start reading and I get into it, a couple pages, and then I find myself stopping and looking up and thinking, I don't remember anything I just read. What is wrong with me? I
Mhm.
don't remember it. I'm not comprehending. Is something wrong? And it's funny because I am a reader. I do read from print daily, and I have this experience. And so I think being online, we read in a way where we're skimming and we're trying to read quickly for information. And
Mhm.
reading from print, reading a novel, you have to slow down. You have
Mhm.
to receive. It models, or it mimics prayer in a sense, because you have to surrender to the text, slow down, read slowly. I teach women in our group how to mark a book, how to make it your own, how to it's a form of leisure, a form of receiving. And anyway, let's see, where am I going with this? I'm not sure.
That's okay. I mean, you brought up leisure. And actually, one of the great books that, and it's a short one, so this might actually be a great one if you guys have not done all, I didn't look at your full list, but Leisure by Joseph Pieper.
Right. We did it
And
last year for
there you go.
this year, the year of the family, for our beginning. We
Mhm.
used, we recommended Leisure, the Basis of Culture. In fact, that book was instrumental in starting Well-Read Mom, because I was reading Pope John Paul's letter to women.
Mhm.
And he thanked women in their various capacities. Thank you, women who are mothers. Thank you, women who work. Thank you, women who are sisters and daughters. And so he was thanking women for their various capacities. And later in that document, or that letter, he talks about, he sort of issues a call to women. He said, women will help solve the serious problems of the future.
Mhm.
And then he goes on to list those serious problems of the future. And I thought, well, certainly I'm thinking about those serious problems of the future. Like, you can imagine the serious problems we have in our culture. And so what surprised me was the serious problems he listed, number 1 and number 2. And the first serious problem that women would help solve was leisure time.
Mhm.
And the second one was quality of life. And I was so confused by this, because I thought it would be more the social issues, like
Mhm.
helping our society be more pro-life, but instead it was leisure time. And I thought, leisure time, like, what does this have to, how is this even a problem?
Right.
And at that time in my life, I saw leisure as entertainment.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I didn't understand what this word leisure meant. And then my son came home from college, and he was in the Catholic Studies program at St. Thomas. And he
Mhm.
came
Yeah.
home with this book called Leisure, Basis of Culture. And he brought his books home, after the school year ended. He plops them down on the counter and goes, "Oh, Mom, here's one you should read."
Right.
And I looked at it, Leisure, the Basis of Culture.
Mhm.
There's that word that Pope John Paul used. And Pieper in this book is calling it the basis of culture.
Mhm.
So in reading that book, I came to understand that leisure is not the same as entertainment.
Mhm.
And it's where we grow in our humanity. It's like going to mass is a form of leisure, right?
Right.
Worship is a form of leisure.
Mhm.
So anyway,
In fact, it's the highest form of leisure.
the
Um,
highest
yeah.
form.
And so and so for everyone who's listening, it's only 67 pages. So it's something that it's a doable. And actually, if you got to cut out something, cut out chapter 4, because he's talking economic, situations. But absolutely brilliant. And when you think about the fact that he wrote it in 1947, right after World War II, and just the desperate need that we had as an entire world to recapture our understanding of what leisure is. But to slow down and receive is such a beautiful, beautiful way to look at that. One of the things that you talk about is a benefit. And for me, I think this is the key for being able to really unlock all benefits of reading. And you call it to preserve the access code. And how about you go ahead and describe what you were trying to explain there?
Yes, what was I trying to explain there? I think it's
About
about deep reading. So digital reading, right? We're scanning and skimming, and we have so much information coming at us all the time now, on limitless information. But there's this ability, reading is a learned skill. And you move from learning to read and decode words to sounding out words to moving on the spectrum of fluency. But fluency isn't the end of it. You can be a fluent reader, but there's another stage, and it's called deep reading. And maybe you've experienced this, because when you're deep reading, you get lost in the text. Do you ever, you're so into the story and you're imagining, your imagination, you're right there, you can see it, and you just get lost. You get in a zone where you're so into what you're reading. And when you're in that zone, or that experience of really being absorbed there, you're probably deep reading. And when you're deep reading, certain areas of your brain, if light up, if they did some kind of scan of it, deep reading accesses a certain part of the brain where we have the ability to analyze, where we have the ability to think, where we have the ability to draw out a memory. And we have, as we read and we're deep reading, we're able to see ourselves, we're able to see another person's situation, our perspective widens. And so reading literature really helps us grow in empathy. Like, we can have a narrow perspective just because each of us lives our own life, but to grow in understanding other people's perspectives, sort of to walk in other people's shoes. It's natural that it would increase our empathy, but that's coming out of a certain area of the brain that doesn't light up when people on brain scans, when people are reading online. And one of the reasons, I think, and there's research out there on this, I don't have it right in front of me, but when we're reading online and we have all these links that we can click on, so you're reading along and some of the text is in blue to click on. Every time you come to one of those, you have to stop and think to click or not to click. And just, even though if it's very quick, just that momentary decision you have to make keeps you in the prefrontal lobe area of your brain. So you're not able to access that part of the brain that we're able to access, just from a book.
No, absolutely. And what you're speaking of is all of that human, piece of the puzzle of what science now calls getting in flow, and flow states. And, so when you're completely, in the present moment, and you're deeply engaged and you lose that track of time, we're in flow. And anytime that we're distracted in any way, like, it's a different color, and, do I have to do something? It takes us out of that ability. But, as you were saying, it broadens our perspective. And then the other point that you had made about is it then gives us the key to access all of Western civilization, because we're open to it.
Right. So if we lose our ability to deep read, if we lose this ability to access that part of our brain, or continue to develop it, or perhaps never have developed it, maybe reach fluency, but never reach this level of reading where we're deep reading, you can read St. Augustine, but you don't understand St. Augustine.
Right.
You're not able to comprehend this treasure. And so that's a danger, is that we need to keep reading and growing in this capacity to read so that we can access the treasure that we have.
So true. And you speak beautifully about that in your book, talking about how books really can help us, gain wisdom, and also increasing our capacity to wonder, and that path to virtue. And that's where I speak to people all the time about, and I call it spiritual reading, but what you're doing, in focusing upon a spiritual classic, that is that spiritual reading. But those things that will help us, inform us, form us, so inform us so we can be formed, especially to be able to pursue that life of virtue, are those things that then become transformative in our lives. And so just kind of, what is your hope kind of moving forward for the Well-Wed Mom organization, and where might people be able to find out more?
Well, my hope is just that we continue to grow, live the truth of our lives, grow in friendship. We encourage women to get together, not just follow online. You can do an online group, but we really encourage that you form a group in your living room, in your church basement, at the bookstore, at the coffee shop, that you meet together, because we want to grow in our humanity, and face-to-face conversation is some of the most humanizing. It's a humanizing experience to share conversation and share life with others. So we encourage that getting together, and books are a way to do that, because topics come up that are surprising, and we look at our life experience and share that. So we're not looking at, you don't have to be an English scholar. You don't have to know how to analyze and critique literary theory. It's just about, what I recognized was these books were written for ordinary people like me, not for the PhDs in literature. I mean, they can enjoy them too, but they're really written for everyday people and about the journey of life. So I don't have to understand everything. I was talking to one mom from my group when we read St. Augustine's Confessions. She had just had a new baby, and so she came in apologizing because she had only read, a couple chapters. And I said, no, don't apologize. And then she recognized, wow, reading a couple chapters of St. Augustine's better than not reading any. I learned something from these chapters I read. And so reading some is better than not reading at all. So I had another woman in a group who she said, I'm not a reader. I'm really intimidated to do this, but I'm going to give it a try. She'd read about a chapter from each book, but she couldn't finish a book until 2 years had gone by, and she finished her first book in the month. Now, was she a failure because she could only read a chapter month by month? No, she was experiencing success, and her success looks different from someone else's. But because she stayed with it, she 5 years later can say, I'm a reader.
How beautiful, and how rewarding to be able to have shared that journey with her as well. So beautiful. Thank you for that sharing. How do you think your work has helped you on your journey towards becoming a saint?
Oh, well, it's shown me that I need the Lord every single minute, which is good. It's funny because I am literally not the person to be doing this. I'm not good at technology. I need so much help. I had a huge desire, but need help every step of the way. But really, people come, the Lord has provided. So what I would love to see is that women grow in their ability to read, and then pass this on to their children, that our homes might have an environment, help create a culture, an environment in the home where we're really with our children and grandchildren in a way where we're present to them. And it's a human place where really little people and everyone can thrive. And I think reading books is part of that, creating that culture. I just talked to a mom just 2 days ago. She came up to me and she said, this is my first year in Well-Read Mom, and can I tell you about it? I said, okay, tell me. Yes, tell me. Right. How has it been? And she said, well, I just wanted to tell you, I didn't understand that every night I was watching TV before this. And she said, now I'm reading a chapter or two, and I noticed that I'm a lot more peaceful. She said, and I never understood that just watching a TV, she said, I just don't understand that I'm really more peaceful and it's pleasurable. I didn't understand that it would be, I look forward to it. Like there's a whole world inside these books I can't wait to get back to. And she said, my little girl in the morning, she's 2 years old, little Margaret, brings me the book in the morning and then gets into bed with me with her picture books.
Mhm.
And she says, Mama, here's your book. And I said, do you think they're happy to see you reading books instead of being on a screen? She goes, absolutely. They
Yeah.
love that, you know, to see mommy with a book. So I thought that was encouraging.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. And what an encouragement for anyone who might be listening today who hasn't started their habit or doesn't have the practice of reading, and being able to know that it does make a difference, especially in our personal life, but then also within our families. And so thank you for that encouragement. So I'm going to give you just a little fun question. So if you were stranded on a desert island, what are the three things that you would want to have with you?
Oh boy. Desert island. Well, can it be my husband? No, it has to be, it have to be things that can't be a person, huh?
No, that's
Well, I
okay.
would bring my Bible.
Okay.
Um,
All
and
right.
probably two more books. I don't know.
Mhm.
I could probably do without shampoo. That won't last long. There are those books you can go back to again and again and again,
Yeah.
and they just don't, they help every time.
Hmm. That they do.
You
Those
learn.
books that grow with you. And you're different, but it seems like they have grown just as you have. And absolutely beautiful. So one final piece. So if you could go back in time and share one piece of advice with your 18-year-old self, what would it be?
Wow. Go back in time. What have I learned? Um, well, I think I know more now that I'm loved.
Mm,
Um, I don't have to, I can accept that more, even with my mistakes and sin and that I understand more. Well, it's another story,
mhm,
Christina, but I left the church and I came back to the church through reading.
mhm,
I think that was a big part of it, reading the early church fathers.
mhm,
But yeah, when I was 18, I thought I knew everything.
mhm.
And I'm grateful for the Lord's mercy in helping me come back to the church.
Well, I'm glad that you did, because the early church fathers helped bring me to the church,
Oh, really?
and so that they've had an impact for sure. But gosh, I can't believe that our time together has already passed. It has been such a joy getting to know you, and then also being able to share about the wonderful work that you're doing with Well Read Mom, and your book, also the same title, The Well Read Mom. And I believe that the website that people can go to is wellreadmom.com. Did I get that right?
Right.
Okay. And I will put that in the show notes for anybody who is listening out there. But make sure that you go and check it out. And one of the things that I encourage people to do, as I said before, is to read, and to pick up a great work. And you're doing that. You're giving people the opportunity and the environment in which they can do that and find success in whatever way it is. So thank you for that. I'm so glad that you said yes to that call, to help stand up Well Read Mom and for all the people that you've touched. So any final words or anything that you'd like to share with people?
No, I've got a cold right now. I'm gonna cough. So hanging in there to not so far.
Well, you've done
It's been a
great.
joy.
Oh, it has been indeed. And for everyone out there, know of my continued prayers that you continue to do whatever it takes so that together we may tell the master of death, not today. Have a blessed day, everyone.